everyone. Today we're going to have full moon circle. I'm going to talk a little bit about this full moon. It's a full moon at 24 degrees of Gemini. I'm going to talk about it, and then I'm going to lead you all in a full moon meditation to activate the energies in your own life. So always a great thing to do with the moons is to be in alignment with the new moons that are starts and the full moons that can be culminations, completions, just a moment to stop here on the path and connect to what we have already done. Really brings us into harmony with the world. Remembering always that we are part of the whole. These rocks, the mountains, the sky, the moon, each other, whether we agree with each other or not, we are all part of the sacred fabric of life. Just to review what a full moon might be about, first words that always come to my mind are culminations and completions. There's a slight difference in those words. Completions means it's just over and done. And we'll find sometimes on full moons that a project, a period of life is completely done. Culmination is almost finished. We're coming to a point in the process where a lot of it seems to be complete. And we can, at that point, see with a decent amount of vision where we started and what we've come to. Many times the full moon asks us to release something. And I always think about the moon, whatever sign the moon is in, whatever house it's in your chart, that tells you where the release is meant to be, where something is done, you've outgrown it. Maybe there's an emotional habit pattern that isn't the healthiest. There's just something that you can let go. Whereas the sun part of the full moon, opposite, shining on the moon, that tells us a little bit more about our direction. And of course, in every moon period, every astrological month, we'll have a new moon in a sign and we'll have a full moon in that same sign. So we get the new moon energies around that time, two weeks away. The full moon is that middle ground. It can very much be a point where you're looking at the positive of the moon sign, the positive of the sun sign, but there's just a little bit more emphasis on releasing what negative habit patterns might be associated with the moon. And of course, if this full moon is specifically on planets or angles in your chart, you're going to feel it much more strongly. You can achieve emotional clarity through a full moon. And it's okay if you want to ponder what comes next, but you don't want to initiate it. Ideally, you initiate projects just after the new moon. A few days after is the starting point, and up to a couple of days before the full moon, still okay to be initiating. So this full moon is coming on the 15th, so we are just a couple of days away from it. So it's almost time to kind of put down the initiating glasses and be fully in the standing on the plateau. You're midway in the process or you're done with the process. I also noticed because the degrees of this moon, 24 degrees of Gemini, is that it is connected to the lunar eclipses of March 14th, that was around that degree level in Virgo, and September 18th, these are 2024 eclipses, that was in Pisces. So, these were, just the beginnings. We're moving, into the nodes going to be in Pisces and Virgo for the next year and a half. We've been finishing eclipses that have to do with Aries and Libra, and now starting to come into a whole new vibration that we're working on. The Gemini Sagittarius polarity, Gemini represents communication of all types, writing, speaking, teaching, I think observing, listening, data collection, the town, like the community, the town, the Geminis, like the walking down the street, talking to neighbors, people knowing you. But it, can also, Gemini can get into busyness and paperwork and superficiality. Sometimes Gemini doesn't care what the information is, just is interested in information, interested in conversation. And where Sagittarius also on that, learning continuum wants ultimately to discover the meaning of life. What is truth at the highest levels? What religion or philosophy brings you to truth? How can you explore the world, the bigger ideas, the global sense? And in exploration and adventuring, we sometimes find humor. Sagittarius usually likes a vista. Gemini can be okay in a crowded jazz club, for instance, and Sagittarius might prefer to go on a long trek alone, a hike, and come to some plateau or peak and just see this vista, see this sky. Uh, and of course, Sagittarius, when it gets into his shadow side, can be extreme beliefs. People who are willing to kill people for what they believe in, thinking they're right. And that is the shadow side of Sagittarius, is you're willing to live and die for your beliefs. Here is the actual chart of the full moon. It is, as I said, December 15th, 4:01 a.m. in Washington, D.C., center of this country that I'm in right now. So that's interesting always to place it there. But that means it's like 1:01 a.m. in Pacific, earlier in Hawaii, later in Europe, but it gives you kind of a sense of where it is. Now, when you see this moon, we're not going to worry about it being near the vertex. That relates to fated connections, um, but that only makes sense if we are working with this East Coast time period. That's a cultivated thing about fated connections. But we're going to look primarily at the sun and the moon, where the moon uh, in Gemini is the release of maybe the things in your life that are too busy, that are glib, that are superficial, a lot of data that you've already collected and you've been learning, and you can say, oh, I've learned enough now. Like, let me take all these astrology classes that I've been taking and turn it into meaning and understand the bigger picture of things. Astrology is a really great example of Sagittarius and Gemini, because when we first start learning, we're all in the Gemini of astrology. Like, we know the planet meanings and the sign meanings and the aspects, and then we've got the houses, and we're sitting there looking at it all and going, okay, well, what does that all mean? Like, how can I put it all together? There's too many factors here. And this is where we develop a philosophy of what astrology means to us. Are we evolutionary spiritual like I am? And we think of the chart as showing us the truth and the meaning of life on a big level, where we're looking at past lives and current and future, and personality and childhood all at once to create meaning from the chart? Or do we believe in fate at a very deep level, and we want to practice traditional astrology and all of the predictive techniques and tell us when we think everything is going to happen so that we can be ready for it? That's a Sagittarian principle, to believe in prediction for being ready, and to not be surprised or not try to start something when it is absolutely not going to work out. In evolutionary astrology, we might say, well, if you start something that it won't work out, it's because you're learning that lesson about that thing, and maybe you need to do that. And something else arises from it, or a quality within yourself that you haven't developed comes forward, when the situation is particularly hard or it takes extra time to be done. Now, we have Jupiter very close to the moon, and Jupiter, as we know, is the Sagittarius planet. It rules Sagittarius. And so Jupiter is actually the function of seeking truth and meaning. And it's also an expansion function. It takes us into hope and optimism and generosity, expansion, of course, truth and meaning. And it expands or activates in a bigger way anything it touches. And I feel to the moon, that is absolutely a close enough connection to call it a conjunction. Remember, aspects to the moon or the sun, 10 degrees at least can be an aspect that counts. So Jupiter is opposite the sun and has been for over a week now. And that provides this pull, this polarity, where the sun in Sagittarius is focusing the light on what has truth and meaning for us and the choices that we might need to make to embody Sagittarian principles in our own life, wherever Sagittarius is in your chart. And then meanwhile, for the last day or two, the moon has been moving through Jupiter and it's been getting its light expanded to say, what are the positive things that you're still learning about? What data you're still collecting that is helpful to seek the meaning? But what do you need to let go of? Like, are you watching a little bit too much TV? Are you reading magazines and articles that don't matter? Are you going down the rabbit hole of the internet? Are you spending time talking to people in your life that you end up feeling drained and you don't feel like anything really positive and beneficial is happening? Are you just simply going around in circles and feeling overwhelmed because of this crazy life we're in right now? So this is the time to be looking at that, and that will be part of what our meditation in the circle will be. Now you can see that the moon is in a square to Neptune. It shows for some odd reason in terms of these lines that the computer, puts in the software. This line is not so strong between the sun and Neptune, even though I guess they're making this line strong because it's connected to the vertex. But I definitely feel that's an active, full, meaningful square. So having a Neptune square to a full moon means that there is kind of a vibration that needs to be integrated into the full moon, but may feel like a little bit of a stress to start with. Neptune, of course, represents the seeking of high frequency, soul-centered love, bliss, transcendent creativity, high consciousness. Neptune puts us in touch with soul energy. And in Pisces, it does that super connected, right? Neptune rules Pisces. Jupiter, also part of this full moon, was the original ruler of Pisces before Neptune was discovered. So we have the two rulers of Pisces activated here, and we have Neptune in Pisces as a square to the full moon. And that asks us to connect into the Neptune and bring that highest frequency, spiritual, intuitive, creative, compassionate, loving energy, the energy that allows us to feel our oneness with all. And I would say, because I like big orbs, that not only is the North Node connected to Neptune, so we have this full moon squaring the nodal axis, but also Saturn is fairly close. Neptune throws such a big energetic vibe that Saturn bringing about a certain amount of discipline, seriousness, groundedness, boundaries around Piscean energy is kind of just there on the outside, like a wink and a nod to say, yeah, you can do it. You can feel all this amazing spiritual energy emanating into the earth, and you can do your breath work, you can meditate, you can stretch in yoga, you can do these things to help you bring this energy in. And as you bring the energy in, remember, a square requires a creative approach to bring together two energies that are having trouble with each other. They're stressed, they don't really get along. And you can see that, both the sun and the moon are in signs that want information. So the moon in Gemini wants that data and that simple kind of information. And Neptune says no to that, says, no, it's got to have a spiritual context. We have to care about those who are suffering and not just talk about things. And as Neptune squares to the sun, it also says, your big ideas, your philosophies, do they stand the test of the deeper spiritual frequencies that you are now in contact with? The world is in contact with this. Neptune has been bringing us this deeper level of Pisces energy for since 2011, 2012. It's almost at the end. It's going to start going into Aries next year. So is Saturn. They're going to say both of them together. We've given you the ideas, the creativity, the imagination, the compassion, the unconditional love. We've shown you how much suffering there is on the planet. We've brought in all of these ideas, some brand new, like, plant medicine should be legal. Some of them not new at all, women's rights, gay rights, the rights of all people, the rights of the planet to survive. Okay, now what are you going to do about it? Are you going to use everything that you are learning to make a difference? And remember that a T-square, this Sag, Pisces, Gemini, a T-square is like a three-legged table that's imbalanced, and you look opposite to see, what it is that is the balancing polarity. And it is Virgo. It is Virgo running, anywhere from, I'd say, 20 degrees to the very end, 29 degrees, the last decan of Virgo. And this is where you can focus your attention. Some of you, I'm sure, have planets or angles there, so you're already operating from that lens. But even if you don't, you can look in your chart and you can see where that is. What house is that in? What area of life does that mean you are operating from Virgo principles? And you can think about what Virgo has to offer, which is discernment, service, humility, problem solving, skillfulness. So it takes this full moon out of this intellectual, philosophical, big picture, small picture, but all about information, ideas, and communication. It takes it from that into, what are you going to do about it? And yes, call in this high frequency, compassionate energy for people who are suffering, for yourself and your own suffering. Sometimes we have to put the mask on first, right? The oxygen mask. But once we've got that mask on and we are connected to a flow, we're asked to take action. I always say that Pisces and Virgo are two sides of the service coin. And Pisces gives service to the world by meditating on the mountaintop, meditating for love, for world peace, for knowing that we're all one. And Virgo is the service of, being in the soup kitchen, working in the streets, helping people who are unhoused, taking care of stray kittens and dogs. It's like skillfulness, your own family, taking care of your aging mother, your little children, people who are struggling and suffering, doing something not just meditating. So they're both really required to help balance this moon. And the full moon is saying to you, what is the meaning of life? How are you going to live your life in alignment with your sense of what is meaningful? So I'm going to leave this picture up while we do our meditation. And I'm going to start the meditation in one moment. I'll have you get into a comfortable position and take slow, deep breaths. Noticing how your body is breathing first naturally in this moment. Noticing the way the breath can touch into the body from the head to the toe. That you can send the breath to this physical vehicle that takes you through earthly existence. Saying hello. Observing how your body feels today without necessarily trying to change anything. Yet noticing what happens to the breath as your intention rests with it, the low belly possibly expanding and contracting. As you breathe, call on the healers that work with each one of us to pour beautiful light healing energy. Feeling it as it comes down through the crown of your head, filling up the body, filling up the whole aura. Imagining this color or colors. The breath still slow and deep. And in this bubble of light, imagine now that you are floating through time and space to arrive at a beautiful place in nature. A place with a wide open space, trees around. And imagine that all of us are coming together in a circle in this beautiful nature spot. Everyone who is here right now in person and everyone who listens to this recording, we are all in a circle, traveling from wherever our body is on the planet to be in sacred space. Make yourself comfortable. You might be sitting on the grass, a rock, a chair. Again, the breath slow and deep as you feel this traveling physical body you have. And imagine in this moment that as the sky is darkening, you can look up and you can see the full moon. Feeling its light, bright, clear. Light touching your heart and filling up the body and the aura. And as this moonlight fills the heart completely, feel the heart connection of everyone in the circle. The heart's connected in a flow, and the inside of the circle in a clockwise direction, and the outside of the circle in a counterclockwise direction. Another heart circle of energy. Protective, loving, and light. If for any reason it's uncomfortable for you to be in a connected circle, you are free to move outside, to sit in a place that feels right for you. Now, take a moment to contemplate your life in this moment, this full moon time, the full moon building to culmination. Your understanding of the moon in Gemini being about information, all the ways you interact with the mind and thinking and gathering data, writing, speaking, teaching, learning. Allow ideas to arise in this moment of what thrills you and excites you about your mental processes, what you're learning, what you impart to others. And notice the blessings that you have and what you wish to keep going with. And then imagine yourself connecting with the sun in Sagittarius, and that part of you that's drawn to cultivating a framework, a sense of the meaning of life, the way your whole life has been in some way an exercise in finding truth and meaning. And what excites you here? What are the adventurous edges of the terrain that you wish to explore? Do you wish to travel, to study more, to have time to contemplate, to bring it all together? What's arising now as next steps? To be very connected with your sense of truth and meaning in life. And then move to Pisces, Neptune in Pisces, that high spiritual vibration, unconditional love, care, compassion, intuition. And the way it's connected to the North Node of Aries, just do it. How can you bring this high frequency spiritual light into your meditation? Open the portal to your highest self. Open the greatest doorways to your heart. There may be a bittersweet quality here with the pain of the world. Expand the unconditional love of the cosmos to take it all in. And then move your consciousness to the other side, over to Virgo. What skillful actions of service call to you? How can you cultivate healthy Virgo to see the problems that exist and to work consciously to solve those problems, to balance this Gemini, Sag, Pisces? And finally, come back to the moon in Gemini and allow to arise what you need to let go of. Where are you too busy, superficial, confused and on the edge, jumping around, meaningless activities and tasks? Let yourself imagine at least 3 things that are shadow Gemini that you might let go of. And then as you're ready, knowing you can come back to this place at any time, with gratitude for the circle we share, sending our light out to all the circles around the world, all the beings of light, working in energy and working practically. Imagining a planet of peace and harmony. And then feeling yourself float back, coming back to your physical body. Feeling yourself connecting in the heart, grounded and rooted in the fingers and toes. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes and perhaps jot down a few notes about the information you received, especially about the Gemini letting go.